You know what I've got right here? I've got lots and lots of comments and questions printed out that you've posted on my various YouTube videos, in this case, for the last week. So if you're new to my channel, this is something that I do. Okay, what I do is I take a period of time where I can just focus on a lot of the different questions that come in on the channel and just put them into one simple video. That way I'm not just having to just constantly reply to comments, although we do that as well. Members of my team or myself will do it. So let's go ahead and let's dive right in. So this time we're covering the week of January 14th, so last week. I'm going to start with this first video, which was best fish to eat on keto, the simple approach. Pretty self-explanatory. It was a video that broke down which fish have the best omega-3 profiles, which ones are good to eat, and why you should be eating them. It's pretty straightforward. So the first question comes from Quarter Turn. Asks, the school I go to serves farm-raised salmon in the dining hall. Am I better off just skipping the fish altogether? Is there a net negative result from eating farm-raised salmon? How bad is it, Thomas? Yeah, I would honestly abstain from it. Of course, the omega profile itself is not good, but the antibiotics and everything that goes in it, there is a net negative response. I would honestly just keep it out. Just keep it out. You're better off just going with something else. Sarah Windmueller says, yes, please do expand this list of fish and seafood that's been on a keto diet. Also, what about taking omega-3s on a keto diet? Is that important? And if so, which brand do you recommend? I recommend getting your omega-3s from an algal oil, okay? And it's not because I'm a vegan, I'm not. It's because it's the purest source, higher DHA. So algal oil is derived from algae, so that way you're going right to the source. One thing we have to understand is that fish aren't magically born with omega-3s. They get it from the food that they eat. They get it from the plankton, the phytoplankton, which consume the algae. So it goes through that process, and then it actually goes through a fermentation process in the fish to get you eicosapentaenoic and docosahexaenoic acid. If you get pure docosahexaenoic, you're getting it from the algal form. So I recommend an algal oil. I have a patent on a specific form. So if you check out PureThrive, I don't talk about them a whole lot in my YouTube videos, but that's one of my companies, so I recommend checking them out. PureThrive, P-U-R-A-T-H-R-I-V-E. Niko Kritikos says, is wild-caught cod a good fish to eat? Yeah, wild-caught cod is okay. Just, of course, use your better judgment whenever possible. And then we've got GodofIllusion says, what about smoked mackerel? Does it still have all the nutrition? Yeah, so the nice thing is, even though, well actually I will say the smoked is actually going to be a better effect because it's usually cooked at a lower temperature, which means that you're preserving some of the omega-3s, which could be fragile. So in short, yes, it's good. James Moellenhoff says, I don't live in the USA and I cannot get wild-caught salmon. So should I avoid it completely? Also, my stores don't sell sardines in water, only oil. We'll rinse them off in water, remove the oil. So you already know the answer to the wild-caught salmon thing. If it's not wild-caught, it's not going in your body. Rinsing off the oil does help. I mean, if that's your only situation, if that's the only thing you can do, go for it. It's better than nothing. It's better than a kick in the teeth. Betsy Rock says, how about canned sardines in olive oil? Healthy oil or no? Olive oil is okay, but you got to remember they're probably using low-quality olive oil, and olive oil is not very stable. So in a can, it's probably fine because it's staying dark and it's not getting oxidized, but you're better off to just, I don't know, try not to go for that whenever possible. Mr. Furious says, hey Thomas, what do you think about using a lean whitefish like flounder or freshwater bass and controlling the fat that you do get in like you do with lean chicken breast? Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad way to go. And bass depends, again, on freshwater fish is very difficult because you don't know. It's very dependent on the specific environment that you're in. So some freshwater bass can be really high quality. I'd be all for it. But other ones, not so much. So if that's the case, then yeah, just add the fats to it, go ultra lean. Okay, the next video was coffee causes insulin resistance. Don't panic. Okay, this was funny. So the video was about how coffee does trigger insulin resistance, but it's a temporary thing, and it actually can be a good thing. But it was really funny because a lot of views hit this video fast. Like there was a lot of views really quick. And the amount of dislikes on the video was so high, and I realized that so many people weren't even watching the video. They just literally were reading the title, and they thought that I was throwing coffee under the bus, and they immediately just had a knee-jerk reaction. At first it was irritating, but then I was like, that's actually pretty funny. I mean, it just shows that no matter what, we just have a stimulus, like it's something that just triggers something. But when you watch the video, you realize that the resistance is actually a good thing in this case. That's why I said don't panic in the title. But anyway, Jared Bergster says, you've contradicted yourself yet again. You made a video about having coffee with carbs post-workout, and the carbs go straight into the muscle. And then at the end of this video, you say don't have caffeine with carbs. Am I misunderstanding something? I love your content, and I really appreciate the effort you put in. I just get confused a lot with the contradictions you make with new evidence. Jared, I appreciate you being cordial about this, being polite with this comment. But it warrants me explaining something. And let me just kind of prepare for that one, because frustrates the heck out of me because quite honestly, my videos are not a coaching system. They are not there to tell you everything to do. Let me say that again. My videos are not a coaching system. They're not there to tell you everything you should do, okay? That would be like me coaching you. These videos are here for your information. So some people need to increase their glycogen uptake, which is what the carb video is about. So post-workout, coffee with some carbohydrates could increase your glycogen. If that is your goal, if your goal is to increase your glycogen uptake so that you have more power for another workout, then that is the route to go. If you're trying to burn some fat or you're trying to grasp an understanding of insulin resistance and caffeine's relationship with it, then this video is for you. My videos are not designed to be stacked on top of one another. Otherwise, that would imply that everybody is doing vegan, keto, intermittent fasting with carbs while doing HIIT, while also doing low intensity cardio, while also having a baby, while also trying to combat PCOS, while also trying to make sure that you're mentally sound, while also trying to make sure that you induce the right kind of energy at the same amount of time, all while sleeping and drinking coffee. Okay, you get what I'm saying. I do videos on everything. So please, please, for the love of all things, everyone, please understand this because it's getting a little frustrating. It's very good information that's out there for different points in time, for different applications, okay? I rest my case. Sorry about that, I had to do that. Okay, John Wu says, Thomas, can the adrenal glands be built back up? I've been told that once the adrenals are overtaxed, they can never recover. I've been dealing with adrenal fatigue for years and I have to depend on caffeine just to get through my day. Is the damage irreparable or can it be fixed? So studies are showing that adrenal fatigue is kind of not even a real thing, it's more about adrenal insufficiency, but it is showing that adrenal insufficiency can get better in terms of you can recover from it. It just takes time and remineralization of the body. Unfortunately, you would have to abstain from caffeine for a long period of time for that to occur, so it's a hard one. Safa13 says, so caffeine and carbs together are not good unless it's post-workout. I have my morning black coffee, then work out after 2 hours. Do you think it's too far apart? Then maybe the rise of blood sugar after the coffee didn't get used to it, so am I causing or halting fat loss? No, I think you're in a good situation there, and you nailed it. Yeah, so if you're trying to, like I said before, increase glycogen uptake, increase the carbs that are going in your muscles, then sure, caffeine and carbs work well. Otherwise, yeah, try not to combine them. So I think that your 2 hour window there, I think you're far enough apart. You should be fine. Okay, the next video was cardio on a keto diet. Cardio just got easier, talking about endurance and everything like that. Jeffrey Hoffman says, how long does it take to become fat adapted? So some studies show it takes as little as 6 weeks. Some studies show it takes a little bit longer. I think it all depends on the person. I think it's one of those kind of things where genetics load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. Like, you know, are you predisposed to be able to be more fat adapted? How was your diet over the last 10 years? I think all these things play a role. So for me, I mean, I was doing keto for a long time before I truly felt fat adapted, which leads me into the next question from Viendra Shah. It says, please give some signs/symptoms of fat adaptation. Well, usually you get into keto fast, but the main thing is, the main sign is your ketone levels don't get super high. So when you measure with the urine strip or you measure with a blood meter, your ketones just don't get that high. You just never notice them even that high. It's because your body is adjusted and adapted and it doesn't need to produce an excess amount. David Ray says, so what do you recommend, low or high intensity cardio? So I'm a fan of both. I love low intensity cardio. I love to get out and hike. I love to get out and run. That's just me. But I will say that HIIT is pretty darn effective because you can really But I will say that HIIT is really effective because you can instigate that catecholamine response that you need to burn fat. So if you had to pick one or the other, probably go for HIIT. But honestly, mix it up. Chris Laterio says, sorry to go off topic, but is kombucha okay for keto? And if so, when is it best to have? Totally depends on the brand. Some use a bunch of sugar in their process, in their fermentation process. Some don't. If you look at like the Synergy brand, they're pretty high in sugar. But some of like the other ones that are out there, like Health Aid, there's some pretty low ones, so pretty low sugar content. So you just kind of got to use moderation there. JP Kokomer says, are there any studies that show how long it takes to reverse fat adaptation? You mentioned in a few videos when you're fat adapted, you can eat carbs and get back into keto easily. But how long can you stay off keto before you undo all your hard work? The cool thing is, the studies are actually showing that fat adaptation is a pretty permanent thing. Now, I can't go on record and say that's entirely true, but the research is showing that. So I don't think that you should go out and just load up on carbs for 3 years and hope that you're going to be fat adapted. But ultimately, you've developed the mitochondrial machinery, and it should be there to stay, at least as those cells replicate and multiply. The next video was fasting and its weird effect on insulin, peripheral insulin resistance. So this was talking about something that I discovered when I was doing a longer term fast, and I noticed that my blood sugar went up. was pretty interesting. So it caused me to go into a bunch of different rabbit holes and research this. So the first question is, Toby First says, does this mean that the post-workout meal should be fat, protein, and not carb protein when you just did a long fast before the workout? It all depends. You know, you raise up a good point, like your blood sugar is going to get elevated. Is insulin not going to allow the carbs to get in? I would usually recommend, yeah, in that case, after a longer fast, maybe just some fat protein or even just protein is the way to go. Eric Beaver says, what happens to the gut microbiome during a prolonged fast? How does it affect your immune system? So that's an interesting thing. And there's another question that comes up at the end of this that I read that I thought was really interesting that ties in with this. So I'll kind of answer this in two parts. The gut microbiome usually stays about the same, okay? So you're going to a point when you don't eat where you have specific kinds of bacteria that grow. It's like when you rest and recover, you have a certain set of bacteria that proliferate then. And then when you eat, you have a different set of bacteria. So I would imagine that when you're prolonged fasting, that one group of bacteria that responds to more so recovery and restoration is actually increased. So you're probably in a good situation there. Little Voice says, does this elevation in blood sugar during the fast increase inflammation and damage caused by high circulating glucose? Well, I don't think that you're going to have astronomically high levels of circulating glucose. Mine were pretty high for a little while, but then they started to stabilize. It's about the body getting adapted and stuff like that. So I don't think you're going to run into an issue there. Jason McDonald says, when intermittent fasting and you get a cold or flu, do you continue to fast or break it? Would it be healthier to stay in a fasted state? So that's kind of interesting. So the immune system operates in a few different ways. But when we look at things like mammalian target of rapamycin, which is really more of an anabolic kind of on switch for your body, that's activated when you eat or when you work out, not activated when you are fasting. So some people would think that when you're fasting, you're in a more how do I say this? Your immune system is a little bit more hyperactive, like you're actually operating in a good sense. Not necessarily the case. I think it's kind of indifferent. So what happens is if you get sick when you're fasting, you're not necessarily in this automatic like autophagy state where you're just going to not get sick. Autophagy doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the immune system. So it's a hard one to answer, but I would almost go so far as saying, like, if you get the flu, I don't think you should continue to fast. I think you should break your fast and you should do what you need to do to get better. A cold is a little bit of a different story. It's an upper respiratory infection. Yeah, you can probably get by with still fasting. I don't think it's going to hurt you or help you one way or the other. So that pretty much sums it up for the last week. You're going to keep it locked in. Next Wednesday, I will post up another video that has comments from this week's videos. So as always, make sure you're keeping it locked in here on my channel. I appreciate you tuning in, and sorry for my little rant halfway through. See you guys in the next video.